As a young boy, I was always fascinated by warhammers, and I was very much surprised when I got into HEMA to find out that there are no actually references in HEMA manuscripts on how to use those weapons. On the other hand, in museums, art, folk stories of the period, we find a lot of references to warhammers, maces, and axes used in combat. So the question presents itself: why nobody wrote on how to use them? I'm a pretty stubborn person, and I set myself to find out how warhammers, how maces, how axes were used in combat. I want to reconstruct based on primary sources and practical experimentation the what and how of such weapons. My journey has just started, and there are many years between myself and my goal. However, I have made some progress, and I wanted to collect all my findings and present them to you, the HEMA community. My aim is to get feedback from those who are more advanced on this journey, and for those who are just starting and are looking for a place to start, to provide a meaningful material on which to base their own research. To be clear, the weapons I'm going to speak about in this movie fit the following category. They are between 40 and 19 centimeters in length, have a shaft for the main part of the body of the weapon. Most of the weight of the weapon is on the tip. Weapons which fit in such a category are the club, the mace, the axe, the warhammer. The following primary sources deal in those weapons. Talhofer has a section on the long shield and the mace, and solo mace in the context of a judicial duel. A similar section is found in the Die Blumen des Kampfs, the German theorists. Please excuse me, I'm very bad at pronouncing German names. Going forward, Pedro Monte, who we are going to cover later in this video, has a section on the single-handed mace, warhammer, and axe. And in the memoirs of Jędrzej Kitowicz, we found out why Polish nobles loved and how they use the Polish warhammer, obuch or czekaj. Kitowicz is the first source which gives an indication why someone would choose such a weapon over a sword. It was a terrible instrument in the hand of a Pole, and particularly so when he was in the mood for quarrels and scuffles. With a saber one could cut off somebody's hand, cut the face, injure the head, and the running blood of the adversary would calm down the rancor. But with the obuch one could cause a deadly wound without even seeing the blood, and, not seeing it, he would not calm down instantly, but would strike several times without cutting the skin, breaking ribs and bones at the same time. In the 16th and 17th century, the warrior cultures of Poles, Hungarians and Croats were very similar. There are historical references of Croatian soldiers using the warhammer in their fights against invading Turks. The mace is a historically very significant weapon for the Western Balkan nations. Many heroes of both myth and history use the mace as their primary weapon. One of the most famous ones is the Kraljević Marko, the Prince Marko of Serbian folk legends. When I was a kid, I remember my Serbian grandmother telling me many stories about Kraljević Marko and how he was using his great mace to defeat many enemies. The basic difference between a short polearm and a sword besides the pole instead of a blade is that the short polearm has a very heavy tip. The very heavy tip leads to different handling of the weapon because of different point of the balance, and also provides several advantages and disadvantages when fighting with such a weapon. The principal advantage is if you're fighting somebody in armor or without armor, the tip heavy of the weapon has a great chance of causing great bodily harm. If you're fighting somebody who is without armor, one shot to the head equals one kill, most likely. Add a nasty spike to one end and you get a very efficient lights out tool. One shot, one kill. If you attack any other part of the body of an unprotected human being, you will crush bones. You will break internal organs. You will cause grievous injury, as Kitovic has said. In Pedro Monte we find further reference to this in the section which provides the basic doctrine of fighting with a mace. Taking the club with both hands, 3 or 4 blows are to be struck with the utmost force and velocity, since if we hit his weapon we often strike it out of his hand. And then Monte continues. Likewise, in whichever other place we strike, we do great work. Monte mentions that this weapon is a good weapon to have as a backup. And indeed, in the Abiti Antiqui we see images of soldiers armed with a short polearm in addition of also having a saber. The great advantage of a short polearm, the weight on its tip, is also its greatest disadvantage. The weapon is far less maneuverable because of the heavy weighted tip than a sword. So if you do wide swings, if we miss, we are less likely to recover in time against a sword attack. We need more time to recover the weapon in a guarding position. Many masters make a reference to this in sections covering the use of a polearm versus a sword. They say we should keep the weapon close, threaten with the tip, and be very careful of wide swings lest we are exposed, and open ourselves for the sword person to come close and finish us off. Pedro continues to describe how a proper mace or warhammer should look like. The club is required to be 4 palms in length and with a handle at the end, on which we can put 2 hands, and in front of the hands an iron wheel in the way of a small pelta to guard the hands. It is interesting to note the addition of the small pelta, round guard, to cover the hand. As seen on many videos on YouTube, it is quite easy to lose your fingers after a block of a sword attack. Short polearms are a specialized weapon. A weapon which is best utilized in combination with armor and or a shield to protect yourself. It is a weapon which is used on horseback or on foot to deal with armored and unarmored opponents. It is a weapon for offense. It is a weapon used to kill effectively human beings. It is a weapon to crush brains, to break bones, to cause grievous injuries and bodily harm. It is a deadly, efficient weapon of war. There is a hint in Petromonte on how to reconstruct the basic attacking and defensive patterns of such weapons. Monte said that any weapon which has a shaft should be treated the same. He was not very specific about the length of the section. And that makes sense. If you have a short polearm which is like up to 90 centimeters in length, which can be gripped in 2 hands, and you can grip into the middle and on top, and you can swing it around, you can obviously try to adopt polearm techniques found in Hofer, in Fiore, or other manuscripts. If you have a weapon which you grip on the bottom, either with one hand like a mace or a baton, or in two hands like a bigger warhammer or a bigger axe, obviously the attacking patterns that you would use are the same ones as you would use with a sword. In Fiore's system, and he talks about a fendente, the fendente is basically the same between a longsword, a polearm, or a dagger. It's same attacking angle. Of course, the weight of the weapon changes how you work. However, the attacking angles and the defensive angles are the same. And a small rotella, which serves as a handguard, you can start leveraging sword techniques and sword fighting angles to fight with a short polearm. Of course, some of these techniques or these ideas will not work. That don't make any sense, right? Two-handed axe is not the same as a longsword. Logical is not the same, right? Or a warhammer is not the same as a longsword. However, some will do. And we have enough information to create a basic framework and to start filling the gaps for different types of scenarios to experiment. I'm a Fiore guy, so I will base my learnings and teachings on Fiore because this is the system in HEMA that I know best. Am I 100% right? No. Does anybody have anything better? I don't think so, because everybody says, oh, with the warhammer I cannot block effectively because the sword is better. Of course, in that case, the sword is better. But if you have a warhammer and you need to fight with it, how are you going to fight efficiently? What are the do's and the don'ts and the doctrines? We have information, we have the dots on the map, we have the outline of how to function. Now we need to fill the gap. People use those weapons. So there was a way to fight efficiently with them. A doctrine of war, a doctrine of combat. And this is what I'm going to find out. Thank you very much for sticking with me to the end of this video. If you like it, or you have any suggestions, or you agree with me, or disagree, or want to add your own opinion, use the comment section, I read everything. If you don't like me, well, it's okay. Not everybody will like what I do. If you want to find new videos, I publish almost every week. Please click on the subscribe button. I really appreciate it. I don't get paid. This is pro bono, and getting likes and subscriptions keep my work going on. Have a nice day and stay safe and train.